Welcome to One-on-One here at the beautiful New Jersey Performing Arts Center, NJPAC. We are honored to be joined by T.S. Monk, a terrific jazz musician. He happens to be the son of music icon Thelonious Monk. And he just told me, right before we got on the air, you moved to New Jersey in 1995?
1995.
You lived over on the west side of Manhattan?
I lived on West End Avenue all my life, and New Jersey to me was like, I mean, it was like, I felt like I was going to the dark side of the moon. I said, there's nothing happening in New Jersey, but I got these kids and I want to get out of Brooklyn, so I'm going to go to New Jersey and I'll just deal with it. And the most wonderful thing happened the very first day I was at my new home. I live in South Orange.
Great community.
I heard this Duke Ellington music, right? So I say, oh, I must have a neighbor that likes jazz, right? So I'm going down the block, down this hill, following the music, and I come down to the end of my block, and it's a place called Flood Hill.
Yeah.
And John, who was it? John Faddis was leading the Carnegie Hall Jazz Orchestra live right there, practically in my backyard.
Come on, that's a sign.
Oh, it was a sign. It was a great sign. And then, of course, you know, I came here to NJPAC when they were still they were laying the concrete,
right.
And they wanted me to help create the wonderful, wonderful jazz program that is going on here at NJPAC. And so I came in and I got a chance to look at this place before anything was ever built.
Because it's 18 years old now.
Yeah.
And by the way, so you're performing at Little Jazz Festival?
Yeah, Jazz Festival next month.
How big is that jazz festival? The James Moody Jazz Festival?
It's the James Moody Jazz Festival, and it's been very, very successful. It's been going on for about 7 or 8 years. I've played it a couple of times. But the amazing thing about New Jersey, another thing, going back to my perception of New Jersey, was when I moved out here, I think Christy Whitman was still the governor. Yeah. And that year, when she was running for governor, she was doing a lot of commercials with Ray Charles, of all people. And I said, oh, man, it's like jazz everywhere. So I've just had a wonderful time. I've been able to raise my kids here in New Jersey, and I'm delighted to be here because I will tell your audience, without a doubt, I've been in most of the major performance venues all over the world, and this here, NJPAC, is one of the very, very finest in the world.
What makes it great?
Well, it's a combination of things. Location. It's in a wonderful location. It's easy to access for anyone in New Jersey and people in New York. But they use the finest materials building this venue in all of the rooms. The finest woods, seats. They had great acoustical engineers come in, not make some of the mistakes that might have been made at a Lincoln Center or someplace like that in years gone by, and has ended up with just an absolutely fabulous performance venue that I happen to know from all the artists that I know that have performed here, they all love it. I haven't heard anybody say, oh, I played at NJPAC and the room wasn't right or the sound was bad or anything like that. So it's marvelous. And
real quick, describe the festival. What are people going to experience in that festival?
Well, they're going to experience me, and I'm a piece of work.
You play the drums, left-handed?
Yes.
You one of the only?
Yes. One of the only, but there's a whole group of drummers that actually play in between because the drums are actually it's assumed you play right-handed. And when left-handed players get on the drums, things are kind of backwards. And so you have some great drummers like the great Billy Cobham or the great Lenny White who actually play in a sort of a hybrid way. They set up the drums right-handed, but they actually play left-handed. Myself, on the other hand, the first day I went for lessons
Who taught you?
Max Roach taught me. And the first day I went, I sat down and I was doing exactly that. I was sitting down, I was left-handed, and I sat down at the drum set right-handed, and he said, my nickname is Toot, T-O-O-T. He said, Toot, just turn the whole set around. It's like a mirror. And so more often than not, a right-handed drummer will jump on my drum set, and when they get there, they say, wait a minute, everything is backwards because I set my drum set up exactly like a right-handed drummer, except in reverse. But there are very few of us left-handed drummers. One of the greatest left-handed drummers that ever lived in jazz, Al Harewood, just died this past year at the age of, I think he was I was with him on his 91st birthday. I think he was 92 when he passed away. Drums keeps you living a long time.
You must have experienced some amazing things growing up. And by the way, when did you know that your father, the great Thelonious Monk, was the great Thelonious Monk? You know, Steve, it's very interesting because I just recently, his birthday was October 10th, and I wrote a blog for the Huffington Post, which got a lot of
likes and that sort of thing. And I was talking about exactly that. And for me, you have to understand, I'm 5 years old, and people are telling me, hey, man, do you know your father's one of the greatest musicians that ever lived? This one is telling me, you know, his music is going to be here for the next 300 years. Now, I'm 5 years old, 7 years old. I can't perceive 300 years. It sounds like, you know, never, never. But there were other people that would say to me, you know, in 50 years, your father's going to be bigger than he ever was. And that I could perceive because I could perceive 1 year.
Right.
So 50 years I could perceive, but still I said, well, in 50 years, at 10 years old, you figure at 50, you're going to be an old man. And I said to myself, well, but by the time I'm an old man, they'll have forgotten my father because I'd seen this one come and go and that one come and go and that one come and go. And here we are, 50 years later. Thelonious is bigger than ever. He is now the second most recorded artist in the history of jazz, and his composition, Round Midnight, is the most recorded composition in the history of jazz.
Well, you know, first time I heard Round Midnight, I just tried to comprehend what it took to put together and whether he knew and those around him knew what it was. What is it? What was it? Why?
It's the melody. Thelonious was a slave to melody. I once asked him what was the most important element of music, and he said it was melody. And I think that the melody of Round Midnight is so haunting, and it seems to have had the same effect on generation after generation because, you know, this year was Thelonious' 98th birthday, but he wrote Round Midnight when he was 23 years old, back in the early 40s, and immediately people just latched on to that composition, and there's something about it. It's also, you have to understand that compositions in jazz are improvisational vehicles. And the greatest compositions are not only wonderful melodies, but they're great improvisational vehicles. And Round Midnight is an absolutely fabulous improvisational vehicle for any jazz musician when it comes to improvising. And so I think the combination of this incredibly haunting melody combined with the fact that substantively it is the kind of tune jazz musicians like to improvise on, I just think it makes it very, very magical.
You talk about improvising. The R&B piece for you, I mean, jazz is jazz, but I've talked to several great musicians here who say that the lines are not as clear cut. For you, the R&B piece and jazz work well together?
It worked absolutely fabulous, and actually I had my first success with actually hit songs, hit dance records in the 80s. But going to that point, I must tell your audience that one has to understand historically, for an artist like myself, I'm 65 years old. Yeah, and in the 1970s, when jazz was at its low point, my generation of jazz musicians, the clubs were gone, the Harlem scene was gone, and so we used to do something we called, well, I have to take this boogaloo gig, right? Because of boogaloo on television. And what that meant was I had to take this R&B gig. And
was it a step down, perceived to be a step down?
No, it wasn't a step down. It's more like a step to the left or a step to the right.
A step to make some money and stay alive.
A step to make some money, exactly. But the effect that had when my generation got into R&B, we are the ones that actually provided the material for what we now call classic R&B. The groups like Earth, Wind & Fire, the Commodores. When you look at
heavy jazz
if you go to the pedigree of the players, Kool and the Gang, you ask those guys, well, what were you doing when you were young? The saxophone players will tell you, well, I was trying to play like John Coltrane. And the drummers will say, well, I wanted to be Art Blakey or Max Roach.
By the way, your first drums came from Art Blakey?
My first drums came from Art Blakey, and I traded them in for plastic Fives drums in the 1970s because that was the new thing.
What?
And I didn't know who Art was. He had been around me all my life. He was just Art. I didn't know he was one of the greatest drummers of all time. And so one day, I looked at the drum set that he gave me and I said, you know, I don't know what these old drums, I want some new, fancy, shiny plastic drums.
You didn't understand the significance.
I didn't understand. See, and that goes back to what you were talking about, my father. It wasn't until I was 19 that I discovered who my father was.
19?
19, because it was just always coming at me, but he was a good dad. Thelonious was around. He was in the house. Around? He took me everywhere with him. He took my sister everywhere with him. So he was really daddy.
Where'd you guys grow up?
New York City, Manhattan.
Right in Manhattan?
Right in
what
Manhattan,
part of Manhattan?
63rd Street and West End, which is now Thelonious Sphere Monk Circle. He would never believe it, but they named the street after him.
By the way, I was going to ask what you're going to play for us, and then I was told that you're just going to...
I'm just going to
hit. Improvisational?
Yeah, just, you know, People often don't think of the drums as a musical instrument. And if you look at the history of drums and the music industry, there are two drum solos that people recall. Old people will recall a drum solo by a guy named Cozy Cole, and it was a huge hit record called Topsy.
Go ahead.
Right? And then you and my generation and most Americans know one drum solo, and that's called Wipeout.
Oh, well,
Everybody knows Wipeout.
Yes.
Because people don't
1960s.
Right. People don't fundamentally understand drum solos.
Because I used to play it on the hood of a car.
Exactly. Everybody can play Wipeout. You know? So when you play a drum solo,
well, but go ahead.
there's a musical component to it that I don't think most people are aware of unless you sort of really put it in their face. And it takes a lot of heart, and it takes a lot of cojones to just get on the drums and say, I don't got no band, I don't got nothing, I'm just going to play some drums for you and make you like it.
T.S. Monk, I know you're not going to play Wipeout for us.
No.
But I know you're going to play something special.
Yes.
Listen, you honor us here at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center, a place you know well, you love and appreciate, and you are going to be a big part of the 2015 TD James Moody Jazz Festival.
It's a pleasure.
And we look forward to listening to you play, and we look forward to having you back.
Thank you, Steve.
All the best, man. Thank you. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato at NJPAC has been a production of the CAUCUS Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence, and by the New Jersey Performing Arts Center, in cooperation with NJTV and 13 for WNET. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato at NJPAC has been provided by Barnabas Health, Cone Resnick, NJ Best, Josh S. Weston, the Fidelco Group, the Northward Center, and by Verizon Communications. Promotional support provided by NJ.com. Small news, big news, True Jersey. And by NJ Biz, all business, all New Jersey. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.